Our story today begins in 1991 with a 5-year-old boy named Ming in the region of Wolf Mountain. Ming is lost and wandering in the forest, calling out and searching for his family. Suddenly, he hears wolves gathering around him, and they start attacking him. Ming runs away, terrified and panicked, but the wolves chase him until he falls to the ground. Strangely, the wolves don't want to eat him. They just need his help because one of the wolves is trapped in a net. On the other side, we see Ming's family, his mother, uncle, and grandfather, searching for him. Ming's grandfather is arguing with his uncle, whose name is Du, blaming him for losing the boy. Du keeps apologizing, explaining that Ming got lost in the forest while they were out hunting, and despite searching, he couldn't find him. Pay attention to this detail, as we'll return to it later. Back to Ming. Surrounded by wolves, he notices the trapped wolf. He goes over to help, removing the net and tending to its injuries. He uses a handkerchief his mother made for him, which has his name written on it, to bandage the wound. Meanwhile, Ming's grandfather and mother, named Minda, are discussing what to do. His grandfather suggests calling the rescue teams to search for Ming. The teams arrive quickly and search all day. However, as night falls and heavy rain begins, the rescue teams suspend their efforts, telling Ming's family they will continue searching the next day. Back in the forest, Ming is cold, tired, and unsure of what to do until a wolf approaches him. The wolf carries him on its back to a cave where the wolf pack gathers. Meanwhile, Ming's mother returns home, anxiously waiting for any news about her son. Suddenly, the rescue team brings her some of Ming's belongings they found in the forest, including the blood-stained handkerchief. She realizes Ming is dead and that the wolves must have eaten him. At this time, news of Ming's disappearance spreads across all the TV channels because Ming's grandfather is a prominent businessman. He announces that if the rescue team stops searching, he will deploy all his employees to comb the forest until they find the boy. We return to Ming, who is overwhelmed and crying constantly. A wolf notices him and thinks he might be hungry, so it catches a fish for him. However, Ming only cries harder. The wolf leaves but returns shortly with an apple, which Ming eats before crying himself to sleep out of exhaustion. That night, the wolf and its mate stay beside him, protecting him. A few days later, Ming leads the wolf to the place where his mother had been, and they spot a group of campers. Among them is a woman chasing after her children to bring them back to the tent so they don't get lost in the forest. During this time, the wolf never leaves Ming's side. Years pass, and Ming grows into a strong young man, still surrounded by the wolves who remain loyal to him. One day, while resting on a tree, he dreams of his mother and the day he disappeared in the forest. He recalls being with his uncle Du, who had taken him along to hunt. However, Du intentionally abandoned him in the forest, hoping to inherit Ming's father's businesses. In the dream, Ming remembers calling out to Du, who hears him but quickly moves away. Ming runs after him, but his uncle disappears, leaving him alone. One day, Ming revisits the spot where his family had camped and sees a group of young people who accidentally leave behind a bag. Ming quickly grabs the bag and returns to the cave. He is thrilled to find a radio inside. The next day, Ming is diving in a lake when he hears the wolf calling for him. He rushes back to the cave and finds the wolf's mate dying. He carefully carries her to a place known as the Sacred Grounds and buries her there. Around this time, we are introduced to a young woman named Tia, a talented photographer with a dream of visiting Wolf Mountain to capture images of untouched locations. Before leaving, Tia tells her younger sister Esther about her trip to reassure her and ease her worries, especially since Wolf Mountain is a remote area with no communication networks. Esther warns Tia that the area is extremely dangerous. The next day, Tia sets out on her journey. Upon reaching the forest, she asks for directions, but the locals send her the wrong way. Unaware of this, Tia walks for hours, unknowingly heading toward the sacred grounds. Along the way, she comes across a stunning lake and decides to take some beautiful photos before continuing her path, eventually reaching a majestic waterfall. When Tia tries to take a photo, she spots Ming in the water. She wants to photograph him, but he suddenly disappears and reappears in front of her. Ming approaches her and starts talking, asking her to play with him. Tia is frightened but takes the opportunity to ask him about the sacred grounds. Unaware that he has been living here for years, and that she's the first person he has interacted with in a long time. The moment Tia asks about Wolf Mountain, Ming becomes angry and transforms, scaring her. She loses her balance and falls from a tree branch, but manages to grab onto another branch. Ming rescues her just in time, but Tia faints. When Ming gets closer, she regains consciousness and asks why he attacked her when she mentioned Wolf Mountain. He explains that the wolves are his friends, and he doesn't want humans to come near them and harm them. At that moment, Tia feels hungry, so Ming offers to take her to find food. However, she becomes exhausted along the way, and Ming carries her until they reach an apple tree. Suddenly, Ming spots a rabbit and catches it, but he injures himself in the process. Tia notices his wound and insists on treating him, but Ming doesn't understand. She gestures for him to sit and follow her instructions. As soon as Tia begins cleaning his wound, Ming is reminded of his mother. Ming takes Tia to the cave to keep her safe, and she is surprised to learn he lives there and considers the wolf his father. When she asks why he lives there, he explains that he got lost from his family long ago and was raised in the forest. Tia feels emotional and shows him a picture of her family to comfort him. Suddenly, Ming hears gunshots and becomes worried about his wolf father. He rushes to find him and sees a group of hunters about to shoot the wolf. Ming grabs the gun from them and manages to scare the hunters away. Tia returns to the cave with Ming to get her bag and leave. She asks him how he learned to talk, and he tells her it was from the radio he found in the forest. He then shares his story with her. Later, Tia becomes unwell due to the weather and falls asleep in the cave. The wolf father brings a blanket to cover her, and Ming stays by her side. In the morning, he searches for medicinal herbs to help her. When she wakes up feeling better but hungry, she cooks a meal and shares it with Ming. Meanwhile, the hunters track the wolf's footprints to catch him. Tia asks Ming to take her to the lake, and he agrees. While they're there, Ming hears a sound nearby in the forest and spots the hunters. He attacks them, steals their gun, and returns to attack again. However, the hunters inject him with a tranquilizer, causing him to collapse. They throw him into a pit and continue searching for the wolf father. Tia searches for Ming and eventually finds him. He tells her that his wolf father is in danger. Tia rushes to the cave before the hunters arrive and takes the wolf father to safety. When the hunters reach the cave, they throw gas bombs inside and enter, only to find it empty. As they leave, they see the wolf outside. The wolf attacks, causing them to fall into the cave. Ming, unconscious in the pit, dreams again about his uncle abandoning him in the forest. He fears that Tia might leave him too. When he wakes up and sees her, he is overjoyed. Tia reassures him that his wolf father is safe. Ming decides to reward her by taking her to the sacred grounds of the wolf. Tia marvels at the glowing stars for the first time and enjoys the magical view. They laugh together, and Ming teaches her the wolf dance. He gives her his necklace as a gift. A few days later, Tia's family becomes worried because they haven't been able to contact her. Her mother, unaware she went to Wolf Mountain, learns from a neighbor who saw Tia heading there. Her family grows increasingly concerned and decides to find her. At the same time, Tia takes the photo she wanted and starts descending the mountain with Ming. He surprised her by crafting a crown of flowers and gently placing it on her head. Ming reveals that the sacred place is where his wolf mother is buried. Tia then realizes the sacred grounds are the burial place for deceased wolves. When Ming learns that Tia plans to leave, he feels deeply saddened. By chance, Tia trips and falls, injuring her hand. Ming quickly goes to find herbs to treat her wound. Meanwhile, Tia's friends are searching for her and spot her, but they see the wolf beside her protecting her. Mistakenly believing the wolf is attacking Tia, they shoot at it. Ming arrives just in time to defend his wolf father and fights with Tia's friends, who don't realize he's her friend. Ming is unfazed by their blows and approaches Tia, carrying her to safety. One of them strikes Ming on the back, causing him to fall to the ground. Tia defends him, explaining that he's her friend and the wolf was only protecting her. She apologizes to Ming, explaining she must return to her worried mother. Ming isn't angry but is heartbroken about her departure. Tia returns home, reassuring her mother, who is relieved to see her safe. However, Tia forgets her bag in the cave. Ming later finds it and discovers her perfume inside. He begins using it to keep her scent with him at all times. At that time, Tia couldn't sleep, overwhelmed by thoughts and worry about Ming. Meanwhile, Ming's wolf father arrives, bringing Ming's childhood bag and Tia's bag. The wolf urges him to leave the mountain. Ming initially refuses, unwilling to leave his father alone, but eventually decides to go. Ming makes his way to Tia, and they meet at the edge of the village. Tia is overjoyed to see him and realizes he came down the mountain just for her. She takes him home, and while Ming is with her, Tia's mother almost falls down the stairs in the kitchen. Ming quickly saves her, impressing Tia's father with his strength. Tia explains to her family how Ming saved her in the mountains. They agree to let him stay with them. Later, Ming's wolf father shows up, startling Tia's mother and sister. Ming reassures them that the wolf is his father and won't harm them. Tia's father is uneasy seeing the wolf, but Tia tells them about her time in the forest, how she got lost, fell from a hill, and Ming saved her. She also explains that Ming got lost from his family as a child and was raised by the wolf. Tia's mother, moved by the story, allows Ming to stay with them. Ming starts helping Tia's father with various tasks. During dinner, Ming remembers his mother cooking for him as a child and breaks down crying, longing to see her again. This prompts Tia to search online for Ming's family. By chance, she discovers a wealthy family in the city who lost their son 19 years ago. She notes down the company's contact information to reach out and confirm if they are Ming's family. The next day, Tia was going to the wish tree with Ming to wish for finding his mother again. But on the way, her friend Hao stopped her, and when she got out to talk to him, Ming was very upset. Tia decided to go with Hao, leaving Ming behind because there was an urgent matter, and she apologized to him. Ming stayed in the same spot waiting for her until he heard a boy asking for help. The boy was stuck on a high tree and couldn't get down, and he was about to fall. At that moment, Ming quickly climbed the tree and helped the boy down. When the boy's mother arrived, she thought Ming was going to harm him, especially when she saw the wolf with him. She argued with him, and Ming returned to the spot where Tia had left him. Even though it was raining, he didn't leave. Meanwhile, Tia called the company of Ming's grandfather, and his uncle answered the phone. She told him about Ming, saying he was their lost son. The uncle was shocked and told her that they had found their son a long time ago and that the person she met must be someone else. He asked for her address to see if he could help. Tia gave him her address and returned to Ming, and they went back to the house. The next day, their neighbor wanted to fight with them after seeing Ming and the wolf. Ming's uncle Du had arrived in the village, and when he saw Ming by accident, he wasn't sure if he was really his nephew. But what reassured him was that Ming didn't recognize him. He left after that. The next day, Ming left Tia's house to avoid causing trouble, especially since the villagers wouldn't allow a wolf among them. He went back to the mountain, feeling sad, reminiscing about all the happy moments he spent with Tia's family. When he reached the mountain, he found Tia waiting for him because she knew he would leave. She hugged him and asked him to return and live with her in the village, convincing him to come back to her home. Later, Tia received a phone call from her friend, saying he had found her a great job and asked her to meet him at the company to sign the contract. Tia didn't go alone. She took Ming with her as her assistant because she didn't want to leave him alone. When they arrived at the company, which was, coincidentally, Ming's grandfather's company, Ming's mother was there and they met in the elevator. Though she didn't recognize him, she was the vice president and greeted them warmly. Ming introduced himself as Wolf, and she felt a strange connection with him. She showed them the company and its products, and then gave him a skateboard as a gift. He started practicing on it all night. At first, Ming didn't know how to use the skateboard until he remembered his childhood in the forest. At that moment, he succeeded and was able to use it again. The next day, Tia's neighbors were in a big problem after they went to the mountain to collect firewood, and their son Bao slipped in the Wolf Mountain area. Ming quickly ran to the mountain, and when he arrived, the child was lying on the ground. Ming searched for Bao, and everyone was worried about him. But Ming carried him on his back, climbed the slope, and brought him back to his family. The next day, the villagers were happy about what Ming had done. Tia then took him to the wish tree, where Ming stood and wished to see his mother. It was his birthday, and his mother, Amanda, was still celebrating it until today. During that time, Ming's uncle Du received a call from a man named Wang, the head of the search team who had accepted a bribe years ago. Wang told him that Ming was their lost son who disappeared in the mountain 19 years ago, and that news shocked Du. At that time, Ming was in the playground with Tia, playing on the skateboard. Tia was filming a group of young people who were playing basketball. One of them threw the basketball towards Ming, and he caught it while moving on the skateboard. The video spread all over the village, and all the girls gathered around him, wanting to take pictures with him. He asked Tia what was happening, and she showed him the video, telling him that he had become famous. Meanwhile, Hao, Tia's friend, presented a proposal using the pictures Tia had taken of their sports products. He suggested a new marketing idea and recommended Ming as the face of the campaign due to his looks and skills. However, Du rejected the idea, but Hao was able to convince the grandfather and the mother to agree. Eventually they agreed, and Ming became a permanent part of the company, which made Du extremely tense. At that point, they ran into Du, Ming's uncle, and went for a walk with him. They talked about Ming's family, but Ming avoided answering his questions. Du, who was also a driver, fell off his bike, and Ming helped carry him. Later, Ming arrived at the hotel, where he was spotted by Tia and Hao. They helped him and took Du to the hospital, where they met with Ming's grandfather and mother. After finishing their filming task, they went to the city. When the promotional campaign was launched, Ming's picture was everywhere, and he became very famous. Sales of the company's bicycles and sports equipment soared because he had become a role model for young people who wanted to look good like him. Hao took the credit as the idea was his, but it turned out that Du was doing all of this to make his father like Hao and admire his management and ideas. However, no one knew that Hao was actually Du's real son. We later see Du convincing Hao to persuade Ming to sign a contract with the company to be their advertising face. The contract would be under the name Wolf, and Ming was prohibited from speaking about his family for the duration of the contract. If the contract were broken, there would be a penalty. The next day, Tia falls sick and loses consciousness. He carries her and rushes her to the hospital, but she doesn't wake up. Her sister, Esther, yells at him, blaming him for her condition. Everyone feels guilty because he is the reason for her suffering. When Ming realizes Tia isn't improving, he remembers the herbs he used to heal her in the mountains. He quickly sets out to the mountains, climbs steep slopes despite being injured, and manages to find the herbs. He brings them back to the hospital, grinds them, and feeds them to Tia while she is alone in the room. When Esther enters and finds him feeding Tia the herbs, she argues with him and throws him out, fearing the herbs might harm her. Ming leaves, heartbroken. Shortly afterward, Tia's fever subsides, and the doctor tells her that it's because of the herbs. Esther feels guilty and wants to apologize to Ming for saving her sister's life, but she can't find him. That's when she learns that her sister is sick and needs a bone marrow transplant, a fact their parents had known but kept hidden from her. Ming heads to a photo shoot while Tia regains consciousness and wonders why Ming hasn't checked on her. Esther then tells her about the herbs Ming brought, which saved her life. The next day, Tia is discharged from the hospital. During the promotional campaign, the actress scheduled to shoot with Ming doesn't show up, so the director asks Tia to take her place. The movie is completed and becomes a massive success. Later, Ming's mother, Mandy, invites him to lunch at her house. The grandfather is worried because Mandy treats Ming like her own son. When Ming arrives, they eat together, and as soon as Ming tastes the food, he recalls the dishes his own mother used to make. Ming begins to talk with Mandy, and Du notices. Du intervenes and confesses to his father that Hao is his son. However, the grandfather doesn't accept this because he disapproved of Du's relationship with Hao's mother, believing she wasn't of their social status. Hao defends his mother, argues with them, and leaves. The next day, Mandy speaks to the grandfather and convinces him to forgive Du and recognize Hao as his grandson. She argues that Hao is now their only heir and should be part of the family to eventually take over the company. The grandfather agrees and holds a celebration to welcome Hao back into the family. During this time, the grandfather notices how attached Mandy is to Ming and sees her treating him like her late son. The grandfather asks Ming to agree to be adopted into the family, but Ming politely declines. Meanwhile, no one realizes there's a wolf in the village. Ming had left it outside and gone indoors. At the same time, Shubai, Ming's cousin, arrives and notices the scent of the wolf. She searches for it and eventually finds it. She approaches it using a gesture similar to what Ming used in the forest. Ming sees this and is surprised, wondering how she knew the gesture and why she isn't afraid of the wolf. Shubai was guiding the wolf toward Wolf Mountain and asked Ming to help her. Ming questioned her, asking why she wanted to go to such a dangerous place. She told him she was looking for her childhood friend who got lost there. Ming refused to help and advised her not to go, but Shubai insisted and went to the mountain alone. When Mandy, her aunt, learned that Shubai went to the mountain alone, she immediately understood that Shubai was searching for her lost son. It's revealed that Mandy is Shubai's aunt. Mandy set out to find her niece before she got lost as well. Ming happened to see Mandy and realized she was searching for Shubai. He decided to help her and went with her to look for Shubai. They found her on Wolf Mountain, and Mandy convinced her to return. At that moment, Shubai told Ming that her cousin, Mandy's son, had gone missing on Wolf Mountain 19 years ago. Ming felt a strange connection and suspected Mandy might be his mother. However, he didn't ask for the name of her lost son or any further details. That night, Ming couldn't sleep. He went out with the wolf for a run, followed by a guard. Coincidentally, a group of young men saw the wolf on the street and attacked it. They chased the wolf, and Ming's instincts kicked in. His eyes changed color, and he transformed, attacking the men and fighting them off. Someone secretly watching under Du's orders recorded the incident and sent the video to Du. The next day, Ming was in his room preparing for his role as the company's spokesperson at an event. Shubai was with him, and as she was leaving, her wallet fell. Ming picked it up and found a picture of himself as a child with his mother. When Ming asked her about the boy in the photo, she told him it was Ming, who had gone missing on Wolf Mountain 19 years ago. Ming realized that Mandy was indeed his mother. Ming went to the event. However, just as he was about to give his speech, the video of him fighting the young men the previous night was played for everyone to see. The crowd witnessed Ming's brutality, and the event ended in failure. The grandfather expelled Ming from the company. When Ming returned home, he found the villagers scared of him and arguing with Tia's family, demanding they leave the village. At that moment, Ming intervened and told the villagers he would leave and return to the mountain with the wolf. He hugged Tia and gave her a whistle, telling her to blow it if she ever needed him. Shubai later visited Tia and asked about the wolf. Tia told her that the wolf had returned to Wolf Mountain and shared Ming's story. Upon learning that Ming had been living in the mountain for 19 years, since he was separated from his family, Shubai was shocked and realized he was her cousin. Tia was surprised because she had previously contacted Du's family to ask about their missing son, but Du claimed they had already found him. Tia decided to confront Du, called him, and arranged a meeting to understand why he had denied it earlier. Du pretended not to know anything, claiming it was his secretary who responded to Tia at the time, and that he had no idea about the matter. When Du realizes everything has been exposed, he talks to her and admits that Ming is Mandy's son. He also warns her to be prepared for anything that might happen within the company. Meanwhile, Shubai goes to the grandfather and Mandy to share what she has learned, that Ming, or Wolf, was raised by wolves. Mandy immediately realizes that he is her son. The grandfather regrets expelling Ming, and they all head to the mountain to search for him. However, Mandy becomes exhausted during the search. Tia uses the whistle Ming gave her to summon him. As soon as he hears the sound, Ming rushes to her. He is shocked to see his mother, who shows him his old handkerchief with his name and bloodstains on it. When Ming sees it, he remembers using it to bandage the wolf's wound and realizes she is indeed his mother. Mandy tells him that she never abandoned him and had been thinking about him all along. Ming hugs her, and they take him home. The grandfather is overjoyed. Shortly after, Tia receives a call informing her that she has been selected for a year-long program in America. However, she refuses to go because of Ming. The next day, Tia arranges to meet Ming under the wishing tree. When Du finds out that Ming plans to propose to Tia, he devises a plan to separate them so Hao can win Tia's heart. At a party, Du gives Ming and Shubai spiked drinks. After they lose consciousness, Du takes a photo of Shubai asleep on Ming's shoulder and sends it to Tia. Heartbroken, Tia decides to accept the opportunity to go to America. When Ming wakes up, he realizes he missed his meeting with Tia. and finds the necklace he had given her left behind. He asks his mother about Tia, and she tells him that Tia has left for America and will be gone for a year. At the company, the grandfather announces that the CEO position is vacant and gives Ming and Hao 1 month to prove who is more capable of taking on the role. During this time, Ming focuses on completing his studies, learning to drive, and excelling in the company. He becomes a strong competitor to Hao. At a company meeting, the grandfather is impressed by Ming's ideas. However, to give both Ming and Hao a fair chance, the grandfather tasks them with solving the factory's production issues. The one who resolves the problem and improves production will inherit the position. The next day, Ming overhears Tia's sister's husband mention that Tia is arriving at the airport that day. Ming decides to go see her but struggles to speak to her, unsure why she left him in the first place. When Ming arrives at the company, he finds that the workers are on strike because they've heard rumors about financial problems. However, he manages to convince them that everything is fine, calming their concerns. During this moment, Tia secretly takes pictures of him, feeling proud but not recognizing him. When they meet, she reveals that she's there for work and wants to conduct an interview about the wolf's son. A few days later, Ming discovers that the company's sales director, Mr. Shao, has resigned. Ming goes to convince him to return to work. The next day, he visits Mr. Shao again, but Shao refuses to come back. During their visit, Tia notices a photo of a child and asks him about it, which angers Shao, prompting him to kick them out. Ming asks Tia why she questioned Shao about the child. She explains that she's the one who took the photos and retrieves them to show to Mr. Shao. When she introduces herself, Shao confesses that he wasn't with his son during a critical surgery because of work. His son passed away while he was away, and Shao resigned out of guilt. He tells them that if they want him back at the company, his wife must return home first. The next day, Ming visits Shao's wife and convinces her to return. Later, Shao comes to the company to meet Ming during a meeting. The grandfather is delighted that Ming managed to bring Shao back, viewing it as a significant achievement. At the same time, Tia receives devastating news about her health. Her condition has worsened due to a spinal infection, and she's told that her chance of survival is only 20%. She urgently needs a bone marrow donor. Feeling hopeless, she goes to the wishing tree and blows Ming's whistle. Ming hears it and rushes to her, but finds her in Hao's arms. Tia shows Hao a picture of Ming and Shubai together, and Hao reassures her that they were likely unconscious at the time. He takes the picture and shows it to his father, Du. Shubai overhears this and sees the photo herself. She decides to clarify what really happened to Tia, and they succeed in clearing the misunderstanding. Meanwhile, Ming and Hao join forces, and the company achieves significant sales growth. Ming confronts his uncle Du about his past actions and asks him if, when Ming was lost in the forest and called out for help, Du had heard him but ignored his cries. However, Du becomes flustered and denies hearing Ming's cries. On the same day, Du meets the lead researcher from the rescue team that had searched for Ming years ago and secretly gives him money. Hao and Shubai witness this scene and are shocked at what Ming's uncle had done. That night, during a family celebration, Mandy is present and suggests that Ming marry Shubai. But Ming declares his love for Tia, who feels embarrassed, gets up, and leaves. Ming follows her, and she tells him that she's dying and he should think about his future. She walks away, but Ming follows her home and insists that he will never leave her, no matter what, and assures her that she will find a donor and survive. The next day, Ming proposes to Tia with a ring, but she collapses and is rushed to the hospital. Hao arranges for Ming to be tested as a donor, but unfortunately, he is not a match. At that moment, Tia's sister Esther steps forward and offers to donate. However, Tia refuses. Ming then takes Tia to his grandfather and mother. There, Ming's grandfather gives him an ultimatum: choose between the inheritance and Tia. Ming chooses Tia. This decision enrages his grandfather, who storms off. The grandfather later visits Tia, trying to convince her to leave Ming because of her illness. But Tia firmly says she promised never to leave him. On her way home, Tia visits Shubai, who has opened a bridal boutique. Shubai dresses her in a wedding gown under the pretense of a fashion show, only for Tia to realize that Ming had planned the moment as a surprise, leaving her overjoyed. Meanwhile, the man taking money from the rescue team approaches Du for more money. Ming overhears their conversation and learns the truth, that Du had deliberately abandoned him in the forest. Furious, Du hires someone to hit Ming with a car to silence him. Hao overhears this plan and sacrifices himself to save Ming, getting hit by the car instead. When Du learns about the accident, he rushes to the hospital, only to discover that Hao needs a blood transfusion. Shubai donates blood to save him. However, the doctor informs them that Hao will never walk again. Overwhelmed with guilt, Du breaks down and confesses everything to his father, from the abduction to the accident. His father strikes him in anger. The day of Tia's surgery arrives, and she tearfully bids farewell to everyone, nervous about the outcome. Thankfully, the operation is successful. Tia survives, and she and Ming continue their love story, overcoming all obstacles together. And with that, our series ends.